Hi everyone and welcome back to Upfront with Jane. I am absolutely delighted to be joined today by Ellie Middleton. So Ellie is a personal brand manager at Great Influence, where she works with business creators to build strong personal brands. Ellie is autistic and has ADHD, and she loves to make noise about neurodiversity. She's also head of community at Neuropool, where she works with employers and candidates to help improve diversity and inclusion in the workplace. She definitely creates a lot of noise, and that's how we got in contact with Ellie. We've seen her posting a lot on LinkedIn and TikTok, which is fabulous, raising awareness. So thank you so much, Ellie, for joining me today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Absolute pleasure. So there's my intro for you, but perhaps you'd like to, in your own words, tell us a bit about what you do, what drives you, and how you've got to where you are today.
Yeah, so I guess for me, it's all kind of like happened quite quickly, but in quite an exciting way. So I got my ADHD diagnosis in October last year, so not long ago at all. And around a similar time, I started working in personal branding and had a viral LinkedIn post. So I did a post about what it meant to be professional. And it kind of took off and a whole trend started, and it just kind of like gave me a platform that I'd never really had before. So I kind of had this new information about being neurodivergent, and I had this new audience that was suddenly interested in what I had to say. And I guess the two have kind of like combined together, and it's been nice for me to share the things that I'm learning about myself and about neurodiversity in the workplace, and just kind of get the awareness out there and just kind of speak about because I didn't know anything about it beforehand. I think that's the thing for me, that, you know, if this time a year ago somebody would have said to me, you're autistic, you've got ADHD, I would have been like, no way, like that doesn't, like, I wouldn't have related to it at all, because I don't think I knew what it actually was. And I think that's what kind of drives me to want to start that conversation, kind of helping people understand, you know, what is ADHD, what is autism. And I think, again, I wouldn't have resonated with it because I didn't see anyone like me that was autistic or had ADHD. And I think that diagnosis for me has been so life-changing, that if I can be that person that 15-year-old Ellie could relate to and go, oh, you know, I actually feel like that, I actually act like that, like my brain works like that, maybe other people can get to that answer a bit sooner than I did and have that kind of light bulb moment a bit earlier on.
It must be a strange feeling when you to have only so recently received the diagnosis. It must be, you must go through a series of emotions. I'd imagine it's like shock, denial, and maybe a bit of relief.
Yeah, I think because of the way things have worked out, it's been a very positive experience for me, because I think I was like desperate for answers. You know, I was getting to a really low point, and I knew that it wasn't just anxiety and depression like I'd been told in the past. I knew something was going on, and I was like kind of desperate to find out what that thing was. And I think with all the good stuff that's happened off the back of it, it has been, you know, really validating, like really freeing and liberating, I think, to finally understand who I am. But I do appreciate that I'm very lucky that that good stuff has all happened at the same time, because I think if all that exciting stuff hadn't have happened, there could definitely have been a lot of kind of grief involved, because like I had to drop out of school in sixth form because of like the levels of anxiety that I was experiencing, and I just couldn't leave the house. So I think if all this good stuff wasn't happening, it would have been like, you know, why didn't anybody pick it up earlier? Like, why didn't the doctors do what they were supposed to do? Like, why did I have to drop out of school? You know, what would have happened if I'd have found out earlier? And I think for a lot of people, there is that kind of sudden realization of all the stuff that they've gone through and all the struggles that they've had that they might not have had to have if it had been picked up sooner. But I'm really lucky that it's kind of all the stuff that's happening has kind of shown me that like everything's happened exactly the way it's supposed to. You know, I probably at that time, you know, I first was with like the mental health service when I was about 15, and I think as a 15-year-old I was so desperate to fit in and so desperate to be like everybody else that if someone would have told me that I was autistic, I would have probably run a mile and been in denial and just not wanted to know. Whereas I was at that point where I was ready to know, and it's then led on to so many exciting things happening that I think it's kind of shown me that it's all worked out exactly the way it's supposed to.
And it's great that you're using that platform, that voice, like as you've said, to reassure others who are going through it. So once you have the diagnosis, how does that help you deal with your feelings? What difference has that made to you?
I think it's just like the understanding and the validation and like the permission to forgive yourself. I think, you know, I always kind of felt like, you know, I know I'm a good person. Like, why does nobody else think I'm a good person? Like, why can't I maintain friendships? Like, why do I find this stuff so much harder than everybody else finds? Like, why am I so lazy? Why am I this? Why am I that? And thinking that I was, you know, there was something wrong with me or I was a bad person. And then suddenly like seeing that list of things as a list of traits of a way that my brain is made up, it kind of is like, I'm not a bad person, my brain is just a bit different to what society expects it to be. And I think for me is that understanding and understanding why things happen and knowing that other people have that too. And I think it's like, you know, talking about it has allowed me to have, you know, I've never through school, or not that I've known of, had a conversation with somebody that has the same brain that I do. And now that I'm open about the fact that I'm autistic and I have ADHD, I get to chat to people and be like, oh my God, you know, I do this, I do that, you know, oh yeah, I can relate to that. And I think having that connection that I've definitely like struggled to have with the people that I've grown up with is a really nice feeling. I think like somebody commented on one of my posts once being like, nothing changes but everything changes, you know, like my brain is still the same brain that it's always been, but I know what that brain is now.
That's so interesting, really is interesting. I think there is some comfort in meeting other people who are like-minded, and also recognizing the fact that different is a positive. Look at all the things that it's led you to achieve. So you mentioned that you did a post about, was it professionalism, you said, and what's perceived professionalism. So that was a LinkedIn post?
Yeah, so I just started working at a different personal branding agency, and until that point I'd never really used LinkedIn, but that was a service we were offering for clients. So it was kind of like, you know, if you're starting to work with us, it would be great if you could, you know, do it for yourself to one, kind of see what works on the platform, like have a bit of practice with, you know, the styles and stuff like that, but also to kind of prove to clients that if we're saying that we can give them a good personal brand, like, can we do that ourselves?
You've taken that challenge on.
So I started posting on LinkedIn, and I'd literally been posting on the platform, or been on the platform full stop, for about 3 weeks. But I think I was very aware of the fact that, you know, I was really early on in my career. I wasn't a marketing expert. Like, I've not worked in personal branding before, and I didn't want to, I think I had this idea of LinkedIn that a lot of people kind of still do, that it was like, you know, very corporate, very like white, middle class, middle-aged men in suits, sharing their tips and their successes and stuff like that. And I didn't want to start coming on and being like, here's how you can be a brilliant marketer, like here's how, you know, trying to teach people stuff that they knew so much better than I did. So I think it was kind of like, you know, what value can I bring that other people can't? And that isn't marketing techniques, it's the way that I see the world in a different way. So I think it was kind of just like an observation that I'd had, you know, that, you know, wearing a suit doesn't make you any more professional. Like, if I've got tattoos and I've got a nose ring, that doesn't make me any less good at my job. You know, being young and chatty and quite chaotic because of my ADHD doesn't mean that I'm any less good at my job. It doesn't mean that I'm any less professional. And I think it was like, I definitely didn't expect anything from it. It was more just like a passing observation. But I guess it just really resonated with a lot of people. And then people started to share their versions, you know. So I'd done a list of like things that don't make me any less professional and things that do make me professional. And then everyone kind of started sharing their own. And it was amazing to kind of see how that had resonated with so many people. And I think it went so much deeper than I thought as well. Like, mine were all kind of, and I definitely like mentioned the fact that I had ADHD, but mine were all kind of quite top level stuff, you know, like the fact that I'm young and chatty, the fact that I like to enjoy myself on a weekend, the fact that I wear jeans rather than a suit. But then it kind of went so much deeper to like Black women being told that they weren't professional because of the texture of their hair, or, you know, women in general being told that they weren't professional because of their higher pitched voice compared to like men speaking in a boardroom. And I think from what was like kind of a top level passing observation for me is actually a really deep rooted problem, and it like kind of gave people that way in to talk about things that they'd experienced. And yeah, it was an amazing conversation to be a part of, and it's kind of spiraled and led on to so many amazing things.
But imagine at that point as well that you probably didn't have many connections on LinkedIn, you probably didn't have many followers, and actually maybe that was almost part of the appeal for people to back it as well, because it didn't look, here's somebody who's a personal brander, that they know how to work. They know how to work this platform, whereas actually it was just you with a voice putting something out there that obviously resonated with a lot of people, and that probably helped. So what was the reach of the post?
Yeah, so it's now got about 3.5 million views on my original post, and then I've kind of lost, I should have really kept a note of like all of the different posts that people did. For like the first weekend I did some screenshots to like put on a post, but like probably up until like the post was in October, probably up until January, I was still getting tagged in them like regularly where people were doing their own versions. So I think like the post in itself wasn't the most viral post. Like it was, no, 3.5 million views is a lot of views.
But the reach beyond that.
The reach beyond that, it kind of, and it led on. And LinkedIn themselves, so like through the different people doing the different versions of it, Minjay Orms, who is VP of marketing at LinkedIn in America, she'd seen somebody else doing it and she ended up doing a version of it. So I think that like led on to big things because somebody in the LinkedIn circle had taken part, and they were actually having those conversations in the background, almost like, you know, LinkedIn is a professional platform. What does that mean now? You know, professional has changed, and they were kind of having conversations about wanting to challenge what professional means, like me completely unaware, just a passing observation, and it kind of all got to tie into their actual marketing campaign. So I was supposed to get to go to LA to film their TV advert with them, but it was just before Christmas, and it was when it was really high COVID times, so it just didn't work out. So that was upsetting, but it was still really exciting to see, you know, just like a fleeting thought that I had is now like a fully produced television advert in America. And I then got to go down to London to record the post, and it was a Spotify advert in America. So literally, like, it is just, when I think about it now, I think, you know, it was literally just like me sat in my
dream
on a Wednesday morning writing a post thinking, what can I, you know, what observations have I had this week, what can I post about today? And it's like led to so many amazing things happening.
Fantastic. I suppose you can't hammer home more about the authenticity of posting then, can you, than that, really? Like you said, you weren't trying to be something you're not. You weren't trying to teach people who you know, you're just being yourself, and actually that's amazing. So now you've got over 30,000 followers on LinkedIn. Did that grow quite rapidly on the back of the post?
Yeah, so I think like in that, before the post I had about 500 connections, and then after the post I think it kind of went up to about 8,000 to 10,000 like quite quickly, and then it's just kind of grown and grown since then. Yeah, which I think is, you know, I didn't expect. A lot of people go viral a lot of the time and it kind of is a viral post and then it stops, but I think I was, because of everything that was happening in my life, you know, I suddenly had this message that I really, really cared about. You know, I've like found the answer, like I've got all the answer to why I felt like this all my life. It kind of was like, you know, this is my chance to get, you know, basically the reason that I found out about ADHD and autism was just pure luck. Like I was seeing a counsellor, and she said to me in passing, you know, has it ever been looked into why you take things so literally? And I was like, no, it hasn't, but I think I know what you're hinting at here. And then after, like off the back of that one comment, I went and did loads of research about ADHD and autism, like realized that I resonated with all of it. And, you know, it was just pure chance that that counsellor that I had, her son was autistic and had ADHD. So she was obviously like able to kind of pick it up in me, and that was potluck. And I think for me it was like, if I've got 10,000 people that read my posts, that's 10,000 more chances of that conversation happening, because I might say one thing and one of those 10,000 people go, actually I resonate that, I'm going to go and do my research, and they might get to that light bulb moment. And I think that's what it was, my kind of like motivation to keep on growing it was like, I've got something that I really want to tell people about, and this is my chance to, use this momentum to do it. Yeah. So I think from then it was just, I don't know, like I feel like I don't find creating content hard. It is just because I found that one thing that I actually really just want to tell people about. I don't sit down and think, what can I post about today? It's like something that'll happen and I'll think, oh, that would be really helpful for people to know, or something that I've experienced, somebody might be able to resonate with that. And I think it's just kind of like, there's naturally so much for me to post about because it's something that I'm so passionate about, and then that consistency has led to it building audience. It's not being something that's like calculated or a strategy. It is just it is like, again, it is just that authenticity that's just like, let's just keep going and just kind of see what happens.
Just taking you back slightly to when you mentioned about when it all resonated you and you started to do your research, what were the key things that really stood out to you as in thinking, that's me?
Honestly, everything. Like it was literally like reading. So I've got my official medical diagnosis for ADHD. I'm still on the NHS waiting list for my autism official diagnosis. But I'm now comfortable in saying that I'm like self-diagnosed autistic, just because so much of it resonates with me and I just kind of need that final tick of approval. I've had like the initial conversations with doctors and stuff. It's a really long process. But I had to fill in like a form the other day. It's called the AQ50, and it's like the pre-diagnosis test that they use. And reading through it, I'm like, yep. But I think for me it was like taking things quite literally. The overwhelm. I'll kind of do autism first and then ADHD.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
So for autism, it's definitely like the literal thinking, like seeing things in a very black and white way. Struggling socially. When I care about like just the 0 or 100 is very much me. Like if I care about something, I really care about it, and if I don't, I really shy away from it. I think the overwhelm, what I thought were panic attacks and what I was told was anxiety was actually just overwhelm and overstimulation. But yeah, I think but if anyone would have told me in the past that I was autistic, I wouldn't have thought that, because a lot of the things that actually are part of autism aren't included in the idea that we have in the media. We have this idea, it's always like a man, it's always like, or a child, a male, like a male child. I think it's like very extreme. It's like meltdowns, it's non-verbal, and it's like, well, that's not me, but I do resonate with it in so many other ways. I think on the ADHD side, it's just, I never realized that everybody's brain didn't work the way mine did. I've always said to my mum, like even when I was like tiny, I've been like, I just wish my brain would shut up, and like just so many thoughts all the time. But I didn't know that everybody's brain didn't have thoughts all the time. I did a TikTok actually about like my ex-partner. We used to have so many, before I got my diagnosis, we used to have so many like bickers and arguments, because like he'd just be sat in his own world and I'd be like, oh, what are you thinking about? And he'd be like, nothing.
Yeah.
Like, no, but I'm always thinking about at least 10 things at a time. And I was like, well, you must be thinking about something, why won't you tell me what you're thinking about? So you must be thinking something bad about, and it would like just complete like mismatch of me, like just, I only knew my own brain, and my brain is always thinking about at least 100 things at the same time. But yeah, I think just like the constant stream of thoughts is definitely like ADHD. Hyperfixations are a really big thing. So with ADHD, it's like I have one hobby and I'm like, this is it, I'm going to base my whole life around this hobby. I'm going to start a business, like I love this thing, and then 2 weeks later it's gone. It's literally like, so that has been me. So like when I was younger, I used to play football and I loved football, and then I'm not interested in football anymore. I'm going to be a dancer now. And then I would like go to dance lessons and I'm going to be a dancer. And then I think that's like hyperfixation. So it's like jumping from one interest to another, but really intensely. Yeah, I think just like it kind of comes into both, like executive dysfunction. So little things I find so, like I find it so hard to keep on top of like showering sometimes, which sounds like disgusting to say out loud, but it's like making myself do the thing can be really tricky. And like that is obviously something that people like kind of relate to mental health. And, if you're depressed, you can find it hard to do those things. But so that kind of tied into the idea that I was being told by doctors that I was anxious and depressed. And I was like, oh, it's because of that. But it's just the actual doing the thing that can be hard with ADHD. It's kind of like, so our brains are interest led. So basically, like the really simple kind of explanation for it is it's a dysregulation of dopamine. So dopamine is like the chemical that makes you feel happy and satisfied, and our brains are not very good at doing it like at a steady rate. So I've either got loads of dopamine, which is when I'm like hyper focused and I'm obsessed with something and I can't stop doing it, or I've got not enough dopamine and it's like I don't want to do those things that I know like a shower's not going to stimulate me, whereas looking through TikTok is going to stimulate me. I'm going to get loads of dopamine through that. So if I've got to choose between getting that dopamine hit from scrolling on TikTok or going and getting a shower that is going to bring me nothing, then it's really hard for my brain to kind of choose the right thing.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, I think that's kind of, I think it like all ties together because the autistic brain is like desperate to understand things, and like I love understanding how things work, but then having that understanding of how my ADHD brain works and how my autistic brain works is how I've then, just getting those two words and then being able to explore what those words mean is how I've now found the ways to deal with it. So like I in the past, going back to panic attacks, I always just thought, I didn't know, I thought I must be anxious about the situation, there's something, it must be social anxiety. I was just having panic attacks and not really understanding why. Whereas now I know that I'm autistic, I know that sensory things can be really overloading. So I know that it might be that the lights are too bright, or it might be that I don't like the feel of my clothes or my skin, or it might be that, there's too many people around me. It can, and it's like, now I've gone away and learned about that thing, I can be in an environment and be like, oh, it's really bright in here, so I might find this tricky, and I can kind of like stop myself.
Yeah, spot it before it happens.
Yeah. So I think the knowledge is really helpful to understand what it is that's triggering you to feel different ways and be able to either get ahead of it or at least know why it's happening when it's happening. A lot of the time, like when I was at my worst and I had to drop out of school, I was so frustrated with myself because I was like, why is this happening? I come from a really supportive family. I was doing really well at school. I got all the uni offers that I wanted. I had 5 offers to study maths at like the top universities. I wanted for nothing, why am I so upset and why am I so anxious? It was almost like I felt really ungrateful, because I was, but now I know that it was just because there was too much going on. Like, it's that simple. It's not like, I think it's just that understanding behind it is really comforting.
So it must be quite reassuring for your family as well, actually, to know how they can support you as well, and know that you weren't going through depression, and how to help support you, and how you've really, now that you've had that diagnosis, of begin to flourish and embrace it almost. And that's your point of difference, rather than in a positive way. Yeah,
definitely. I think like my mum had such a rough ride with it. Like, I was a 17-year-old, 18-year-old that couldn't leave the house. Like, that's the point at which parents, it's like, you've like done all the hard work, like they're going to start to bloom into this like young adult. I couldn't not have my mum. Like, my mum, because I was under 18 when I started seeing the mental health service, my mum was involved in a lot of it. She would come to my appointment, she would always be there, and my mum became my safety blanket. And I was literally glued to my like therapist actually at one point kind of recommended that I keep a key ring of my mum with me. That was like how dependent I was on my mum at like 17, which that is so unusual. It's been amazing in the end because it means that we have such a close and strong relationship. But you know, that must have been so tough for my parents to have to go through that and see me in the way that I was and just have no idea why it was happening or what they could do to stop it. And then my brother actually went through like a really similar situation after it. So it was like I had this really rough patch, and then it was like, we've got through it, it's going to be okay. And then my brother had like a very low patch too. So yeah, my parents have definitely been through it with the struggles that we've had. And I think, now having that understanding, I think it must be reassuring for them as well, because, you know, you think of like, you talk like when you see stuff about autistic children, it can be really hard for their parents to like think like, why don't they love me? And I think that's never a conversation that has like happened in our household. Like, we are a really close family, but it probably does explain to them questions that they've maybe never voiced about like, why do we clash? Why does she get so emotional about certain stuff? You know, like, why do we not connect in the way that I thought we would? And I think it just answers questions. Once people understand what those things actually are, I think it answers questions to everybody around. Really.
Yeah, absolutely. So with regards to, you've been through a big learning over the last few months, massive pivotal moment for you. Have any of the learnings helped you then with when you're working with clients? So you're helping them with that. You've obviously shown how to do it. You've been given a challenge, get on LinkedIn, make more of it. You've well and truly over exceeded their expectation. What are there any learnings that influence how you work with clients, would you say?
Yeah, I think understanding the value of that authenticity, definitely. You know, the reason I think I did a lot of work, like not work, but like thinking about at the time, like, why are my posts doing better than client posts? You know, why? And it was like, what can I bring from my content back to, and it was, I think it is that, like, go one step beyond, like, don't talk about what you've done, talk about what you've learned from it or what you feel. And it's like asking the right questions to make sure that you get the best answers from clients. I think that's definitely, you know, going one step further, sharing personal thoughts, sharing that unique thing that only they can bring, and like knowing what to ask to get that out of them, I think, as well. I think a thing that I'm kind of like exploring at the moment and want to maybe like do a talk on in the future is how I think growing up as an undiagnosed neurodivergent has made me a better marketer. I think masking and marketing are two very similar things. You know, I've grown up not knowing why some of the things that I did weren't well received by the people around me. So I've spent so much time kind of like with trial and error, like, okay, if I'm blunt, people don't like that, but if I say it in this way, then I'm more likely to be well received. And I think doing that, like unconsciously almost, has definitely helped me learn and be good at knowing what is well received by audiences, because that's something that I've like intentionally done. You know, I've not, like, a lot of people, I guess, just sail through life and just do it without really realizing that they're doing it. But as somebody who it didn't come natural to, I've like analyzed, like, this goes well, you know, humor is well received, being friendly is well received. I think that's one thing that definitely helps me. And I think having the ability to like translate complicated things into simple ones. I think a lot of life as somebody that is neurodivergent, like, the world doesn't make sense and you have to like translate it into a way that does. And I think that is a skill that I've learned. Like, a lot of the things that happen to me now, the way that I process them is by turning them into a LinkedIn post. And that is so short. You know, I feel like if I can explain this really simple concept in a 5-sentence LinkedIn post, then that shows really good understanding of it. And I think if I can do that with like something that's happening for a client or something, you know, if I can take a podcast or a voice note that a client has sent and I can like just pull it into that way that makes it make sense, like, that helps audiences understand it better. Yeah, I think it is that like almost like intentional understanding of how other people will understand it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, really interesting, because I think everybody wants to feel like they're being communicated with on a level that they understand. You never appreciate somebody explaining things where it starts becoming jargon, or you think, I just don't know what this means. I'm not on your level. I think also one thing that I picked up from what you've been saying is obviously you come across highly positive. You've turned what could be a quite distressing situation into positive, but you've definitely not shied away from showing your vulnerable side as well. And I think sometimes that's probably something that people can relate to as well. I think when you go on and you congratulate yourself all the time, talk about your successes, whereas actually if you can perhaps show a little bit of that vulnerability or talk about the hard times without not going out for sympathy, but I think then people can open up to you more as a person, as a human being, and say, actually, you are, on my level. In some ways, it's more inspiring than somebody just talking about all the positives.
Yeah, I saw Leah Turner, who is like one of my good friends now through LinkedIn. She did a talk the other day, and she mentioned, like, say Beyonce, if you see her on the front of a magazine and she's all like glammed up and all like unreal and spotless, she's inspirational. But then when you see the photos of her with her family life and in a bikini and she's got a bit of cellulite, that becomes aspirational, because it's like, yeah, she's just a human like me. She's just doing really, really well. She's not this like goddess. She's just like me, but she's making the best go of it. And I think if you can kind of, again, share those bits of you that everybody can relate to, then they're going to resonate with you more, and they're going to understand, that you're just one of them, but just do it, like giving it a good shot. You're not this like thing off in the distance. And I think especially for some of the people that we work with, they're very successful, they're very high profile people, and it's very important for them and the people, like, for they are just people. I get to see that because I get to talk to them every day, but in the past I would have been like, oh my goodness, this person is so amazing and so successful. But if you can remind their audiences that, they're just people like us, they're just very good at what they've done, or they've worked very hard, or they've, done this, it's a lot more relatable to the people reading it.
Yeah. So you've done fantastically well, seeing you've said that you almost get attracted to things and that becomes your obsession for a period of time, and then you drop it, but you have managed to maintain consistent with your personal branding. Have you found that a challenge at times?
I think because it's something that I love so much, I haven't. I think I found ways to like get around it. So sometimes there'll be like one night where I have loads of ideas, so I'll just schedule them. So that means that I don't have to, if a lot of the time I have like loads of thoughts, and I'll schedule posts a week in advance. So it's not like I have to wake up every morning and remember to do the thing. It's just like when I just kind of like take advantage of the times when it does flow, and then like set it up. I think I just use Hootsuite, and there's an app on your phone, which I just think is so handy for me, because it's just, normally I would just like write notes in my phone if I have thoughts, but now I can just like ping them into Hootsuite on my phone, and I can set it up to go out next Wednesday morning, and then I can come to it over the week and just be like, oh, I've, if I have a thought and add to it, change it. But I think, like taking advantage of those spurts of inspiration, rather than if that didn't happen, I'd probably forget the ideas that I had. And
or have a day where you posted 20 things and 3 weeks off. It's probably an outlay for you as well, isn't it, to process things, to make sense of them, and then you get the reassurance that people can relate to it.
I think definitely, like, I think one of the definitely underrated things about being a content creator or working on building an online reputation is that like understanding of it, and that being able to explain your thoughts in a way that other people understand helps you to, it's like you learn by teaching, and that's essentially what you're doing. You're like having these kind of like weird thoughts, and then you're putting that in a way to tell other people, and just like the process of doing that really does help me. I think it's almost like quite a controlled way of putting your thoughts out there. I think, if I even if I feel like overwhelmed about stuff, I think putting it into content is quite a nice way of doing it, because I don't have to then like ring my friend and like have the back and forward of a conversation and be asked questions about it. I can just kind of like package it up in a way that makes sense to me, out to the world, and it's like, it's almost like therapy but without the questions.
Yeah. And also knowing that at the same time you're potentially helping so many other people, so it's amazing. So you've got exciting future ahead of you. You're currently in Leeds, but you're about to move to Manchester, which is really exciting. How are you feeling? Is it daunting, or do you feel like you're all right with it? You've got
it's been quite an I'm a control freak in terms of like autism, and I think like with autism, like, and not liking change, for me, I feel like a safe place is very much a place. Like my flat is my flat, and I know my flat, and the feeling of like having to go from that to a new one has been a bit of a scary thing, and it's been quite a chaotic thing. Just the rental market is an absolute joke right now, so it took me a really long time to find somewhere, but I think now that again, it's like the positives that are going to come out of it, because at the minute I'm very tired because I'm going from Leeds to Manchester, so I don't like, my evenings are either in a hotel or on a train home, whereas I know that, you know, at the end of the month, once I'm moved in, I've got a new safe place, so I'm not in and out of hotels. I'll get my evenings back, so I'll feel less overwhelmed because I'll have time for myself, and you know, it's like the start of this next chapter. So yeah, I think there's definitely been a lot of meltdowns along the way. Like me and my mum were trying to pack the flat up last weekend, and there was a lot of me sobbing and just asking her to stop. Like I was like, I've had enough now, just leave it. Like it's not like, I'm not going to pretend, you know, again, relatability, it was not being easy, but the good outweighs the bad. I'm really excited to have a new
start. Keep reminding yourself. Yeah, exactly. Amazing. No, it's been absolutely fascinating speaking to you, Ellie. We've certainly watched your journey and watched you grow personally and professionally, and it's been an absolute pleasure, and thank you. I really appreciate you taking the time out of your day to speak to me and share your insights, and we look forward to watching you and seeing what's next. And you never know, when you're over Manchester, we'll have to catch up at some point. We're only down the road in Chester. It'd be great definitely. To meet you. Yeah.
Thanks for having me. I've loved this conversation. I feel like it's been a really different one to what I've done before and what I was expecting to have. I think it's nice to like talk about different sides of stuff. But yeah, thanks so much for having me.
No, it's been a pleasure. Look forward to seeing it out there. Thank you so much. Last question, actually, before you go. If people aren't already connected with you, what's the best way for them to follow you and find out about you?
Yeah, so my LinkedIn is Ellie Middleton, and I'm also on TikTok, Unmasked with Ellie. If you find any of my platforms, my link tree should be on there, and everything's on there together. So wherever you can find me, you'll be able to find me on the rest.
Ellie, follow. Thank you so much, Ellie.